I'm going to lead this team in such a way where I can represent Jesus well to them. And like, that's ministry. That's doing like what Jesus calls us to do. It's incredible. Like that's more ministry than I can do on a Sunday morning, because that's like personal relationships. That's powerful stuff. So that was. Hey everyone, welcome to the Represent Jesus Well podcast, where we're all about helping you represent Jesus well right where you're at. My name is Sam. I'm one of the pastors here at Ripon Community Church, and that statement, represent Jesus well, that is actually our mission statement, to represent Jesus well in Ripon and beyond. I'm so excited to talk about this stuff today. I'm here with my wife Meg, who is the communication and connection director here at Ripon Community Church.
Yeah, we're so excited for the podcast to be back. We're kicking off today our brand new season. We have a lot of different guests and stories in store for the next few episodes. We cannot wait to share different stories of how people just like us are representing Jesus right where they are. So that's going to be great. But today, what I thought would be only fitting for the first episode back is to turn the tables on Sam and to ask you all about the Genesis of RJW, or Represent Jesus Well, and where that has come from and what that means to you. So to start off with, though, I think it's really helpful to know, where did this whole idea of a new mission come from? So for those of you that might not know, we are 7 months in.
9 months.
Really?
Yes, it is.
I'm really bad at math, I guess. Okay. Blurry timeline, but we're in a new building, and it's been a whirlwind of kind of getting settled here at 1 Westgate Drive, and that has been amazing and growing with our church family. But part of that has also been communicating this new mission statement, and it's kind of happenstance a little bit, how you stumbled upon changing it. I know it happened before we moved to this new building, but can you just give the listeners a little bit of behind the scenes of when you started to think about Represent Jesus Well, and when you realized, like, oh, this is something I really want to share with others?
Yeah, definitely. So it's kind of, it's a wild story. Like, there's a whole bunch of different dynamics to it, different pieces to it. And like, you were here along the whole ride with me for it. So like, it actually goes back to before I even took over as lead pastor at the church. We were thinking like, okay, we want to make sure that God wants us here long-term. So we actually explored some other options, thought about maybe going someplace else. Ultimately, that did not happen for multiple reasons. But during that process, I actually interviewed at another church and found myself really enamored with their mission statement. And it got me to just thinking about what ours should be. I mean, their mission statement was something kind of quirky and weird, like where the river is, wherever it flows, let there be a blessing. It was kind of weird as I look back on it, but it got me just thinking about it. And so during that time, we were just wrestling with and thinking about what it looked like as a family to be who we say we are, like actually match who we are as people with our positions and our jobs to what we were actually with the way we were living our life.
I think we were looking for like a practical way to live out what we believed.
100%. Yeah. So that was happening. That was in our mind. And then also I was reading a bunch of different stuff, like Dallas Willard has a book, and now I'm going to forget the name of it. But
Renovation of the Heart.
That's it. Yes. Okay.
Is
Renovation.
Right?
Yes,
okay.
That's it. I was reading Renovation of the Heart, talking about apprenticing Jesus. And I was trying in my mind to like sum it all up, like get it down to the most basic, the most simple phrase I could possibly do to think these things through, and really just to do it for us as a family. Yeah. Like that was really what I was trying to do. And so I landed on Represent Jesus Well. And it was kind of fun to think about how you could do that. And there's a whole lot that goes into it, but we just kind of started practicing as a family. Like we would say it, like we'd send our boys off, we'd say RJW, and they'd say RJW back to us. And it even happens like most days that we'll have that little exchange of RJW because it's a reminder for what to do. So I think absolutely.
So practically and personally, I love hearing that little bit of that Genesis of behind the scenes. So when you say RJW, or when you think about that, what does that do for you? Like in that moment, like put yourself in that moment.
Yeah. Man, it does a lot. It's funny because I think there are just so many pressures in life where you're trying to accommodate people, you're trying to do things the right way, you're trying to take care of what you need. And so sometimes it's just really helpful to have a clarifying idea. So for me, when I hear those words, like represent Jesus well, it gives me just some clarity. Do you remember the what would Jesus do thing?
Yes.
Like way back in the 90s?
The bracelets.
Yeah. Did you have one of those?
Yes,
I definitely had one of those.
Yes.
But I always found myself, whenever I saw what would Jesus do, thinking like, well, whatever Jesus would do like that, I can't do that. Like he would like do a miracle or something. So I never really I like the idea of it.
Wasn't tangible enough.
Exactly. But this, like, there's this shift that happens inside of you where you realize, well, I have a responsibility. Like I represent Jesus, so I need to do what I can within my own power to represent him well, like to show what Jesus would be like how, if Jesus were in my body doing what I can possibly do, how can I live in such a way where it shows him well?
It's almost like a lens switch or a perspective shift. When you say it, it's like, oh, that's right. Let me focus on what's important, or let me humble myself again and remember who's in lead of my life. So it's a good reminder in that way.
And the Taoist word language is like apprentice Jesus, like to be his apprentice and to follow him and to do what he did. And that's just helpful language. Like, what does that look like? And there's a whole lot of language that goes into this stuff and a whole lot of like history, even back to the Old Testament. It's so fun to think about.
Yeah. Well, on that note, so it was very personal. That's how it started out. It was, you were reading a book, you were trying to practically apply it to your own life and figure out how you yourself can live it out, and then also lead our family through that. When did it click where you're like, oh, I want to share this with others, and this might be this could be something that a whole church family, our whole community can rally around? When did that kind of shift happen? Or why did that happen?
So in the summer of 2021, we were asked about beginning to take over as a lead. And so during that process, I was going through in my brain like, okay, well, what does this look like? What does it look like to lead well? And so the beginning of leading on 2022, that was in the back of my mind, like, how do I bring this to the church? Or rather, like, what do I bring to the church? And like, how do we like have some guiding principles? How do we have like a new direction? And so it wasn't like a change in mission statement right away. It was just like, hey, you know what, for this next year, this is what I've been practicing with my family.
This is what's impactful to me. I want to share it with you.
Exactly. And so we end up making like the theme for the year. Let's just try to represent Jesus well with whatever we do. And it was super helpful. I heard people talk about it. They developed a thing where they would just use it in their own language. Like it actually was something people would just randomly say when they were trying to describe what they were trying to do. And it was like, wow, this is really helpful for a lot of people. And so in 2023, we actually made the move to say, hey, this is a really good guiding principle, a really good mission. Like, we're trying to do this. And it's beautiful because it applies personally. Like, it can apply to like going to work. It can apply to how you work with your family and how you live with your family. It can apply to a big group of people, like how a large organization can function, and how it's scalable, like multiple different levels. And so it was really neat to watch in 2023, or last year, it just become this very profound thing that our entire church began to own. So it's cool how it went from like this thing we did as a family to this thing that really functioned really well as an entire church.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you have some really cool stories that people have shared with you too, of them personally being impacted by the reminder of representing Jesus well, and being in a workplace and having it really give them a calling or a sense of a mission there. Do you want to share any cool stories? Yeah.
So there's a couple of different ones. I remember one, I was at like a practice, some sports practice, and there was a family that attends the church, and they were talking about how they had to have a discussion with their kid about like something that they were doing. And the anchoring point for the discussion was about how does that child represent Jesus well. And And that was like a click moment because it was just like randomly about the community, normal life stuff. And that was helping them parent. Yeah. And so that was really, really neat because they could have that kind of discussion. Like, what does it look like to parent well in that situation? Additionally, there's some friends recently, a few weeks ago, there was a friend who was thinking about job changes and shifts. And he was basically saying like, hey, I realized in this moment that this was my opportunity to be in this particular culture, to lead a team. And the way I can see it isn't just like get more money, isn't just to like have a particular role I like a little bit better than the other one. It was like, I'm going to lead this team in such a way where I can represent Jesus well to them. Mm-hmm. And like, that's ministry. Mm-hmm. That's doing like what Jesus calls us to do. It's incredible. Like that's more ministry than I can do on a Sunday morning. Cause that's like personal relationships. That's powerful stuff. Yeah. So that was really impactful to me to hear that from him recently.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? I know you've shared with me before, like you mentioned that's what Jesus calls us to do. Like, talk a little bit about that, like decompact that a little bit for people, the apprenticeship, the history behind that, and the importance behind that. Yeah. So this isn't just like a cool phrase that sounds really neat that people can, chant and say, okay, yay, RJW. Like there's actual,
there's theological richness to it. So it's wild. It's such a simple phrase that you can remember and use, but it actually has its history and its origins all the way back to Genesis. Like God made us in his image, which means we are his image to the world. So to be his image, to image God, to be and show God in the way we act, starts in Genesis. It goes through Abraham. Like he's called to be a light to the nations, to bless all the families of the world is literally like his call, the entire nation of Israel. That's what they're supposed to do. It goes throughout the Old Testament, and then in the New Testament, it's Jesus. He embodies that. He embodies representing God's character to the world, and then we're called to be his ambassadors and called to be his representatives, to imitate Paul as he imitates Christ. Like we're called to imitate Jesus. So there's this sense in which when we do that, we're doing literally our call since the beginning of time, since the beginning of creation. Like we are called to show God to our neighbors, show what God's like. And we can most fully do that when we are showing others what Jesus is like and representing him. Like when you go to another country, if you're an ambassador, you do something in the name of that country. Well, all throughout the Bible, we see this phrase, especially in the New Testament, we see in the name of Jesus. Well, that is a representative comment. Like you are representing Jesus. You are doing it in his power. You are carrying his authority with you. It's wild. Like when we get close to people, when we're in groups of people that follow Jesus together, we are literally bringing the kingdom of God close to people. It's not a place. It's like a nearness of God that happens when God is with two or more that are gathered in his name. Like there's this wild richness to this idea of being his representatives. And I love that. And like I'm gonna go one more thing because I know I'm like going on and on, but there's one more thing here. Like the church itself is that. The church isn't called to be a consumerism place. The church is called to be a group of people that go and do together and share together. So when we're a church, like I think one of the most amazing things about the church is it is like it is the single most valuable thing that a community can have. I think that's really cool. Because
you get super jazzed when you talk about this.
Not even just on camera. Like when we're talking about this, like it's goofy.
I know.
Because it's so true. Like that is what a church should be.
Yeah.
It's not this thing that everybody looks at and says, "Oh wow, what a cool social club."
Yeah.
It's not it at all.
Yeah.
It's a group of people that like infiltrate in the best possible sense of the word, the entire community, and bring these values and this hope and this joy into schools, into jobs, into families, into Little League, into PTO meetings, I don't know, whatever, all these places.
What I've been saying lately is it's not a spectator sport. We participate in this. So I want to put a pin in that because I have a question that pertains to that, but I do want to like rewind because you were just spitting so much out. Sorry. But you were talking about how this is something that we're called to. And the thing that came to mind for me was right now this is a very buzzy word, but identity.
Yeah.
Like I feel as though groups of people and even individuals are searching for identity, are craving identity. And this is directly like the identity that we get to embrace, that God gives us, and the importance behind that. And I was just wondering, like, if you could speak to that a little bit, like for anybody that maybe is thinking like, this is great, but it's not for me, or this isn't something that I feel like I can embrace, or I'm not good enough, or what would you say to that person that's hearing this but is discounting themselves, maybe because they have not embraced that identity that they do have in Christ and that calling that they do have to be a representative?
That's such a good question. I think a lot of people disqualify themselves right away. They don't think that they can live up to a certain standard. They don't think they're good enough. They've made too many mistakes, sinned too much, whatever it might be. And there's like two parts to this. In one part, I think we have to acknowledge the fact that whether we like it or not, if we attend church, if we've ever made any kind of spiritual comment to our friends, if we have a fish on the back of our car, if we have, which watch your driving, like if you have, think about that. But if you have any of those things, you already do.
Yeah. You
already represent Jesus to the people around you. So whether you like it or not, it's there. It is your identity in a way. But that's not a bad thing. I think sometimes we think like, oh no, I don't want that responsibility. But God's not calling us to like never make a mistake. Like he wants us to live fully. And there's the reality that we're going to make mistakes. We're going to fall short. But it's actually in that. It's in those moments where we fall short. It's in those moments when we don't live up to the standard that we know we ought to and want to. It's how we react to that actually gives us the most beautiful opportunities to represent Jesus well. Because it's an opportunity to show that God is a God of grace and love. God is also a God of restoration and going through relationships and redeeming relationships the way they ought to be redeemed, to go and apologize, to go and forgive, to go and be the type of people that Jesus would have us be. That is a beautiful picture of representing Jesus well. And if you're afraid of that identity, like
maybe not afraid, but maybe if people quickly discount themselves.
Yeah.
What would you say?
Sometimes I think people make the mistake of thinking you need to do really big things to be good enough.
Exactly.
But it is in the smallest, most genuine, sweet acts of a genuine welcome to someone, a genuine hello, a genuine how are you, can be the most beautiful way of representing Jesus well in an interaction. So you don't have to do these big things. It can be so small, and that is the kind of thing that God can make so big.
And what do you think, like, what does that do to someone, or what have you yourself personally experienced embracing that identity?
Yeah.
How has that transformed your relationship with Jesus? How has that transformed how you live your life? I know for me personally, it's humbled me quite a bit. I think I shared with you that the best way that I represent Jesus well right now in this season is just being really quick to forgive and also ask for forgiveness. It's just a season where we've been stretched, and so I'm often exhausted or crabby. And so for me to be able to say, oh, I am so exhausted, I am so sorry, I shouldn't have said that, has been very humbling for me, and has been a really tangible way that I feel like I am embracing my humanness and surrendering and representing Jesus well to those people around me that really do matter most to me.
Yeah.
And it's also showed me, like, I am not the savior. I am not in charge of my life or leading my life. Jesus is. And so, but for you personally, as you embraced this identity of being a representative and the calling and of representing Jesus well, how has that transformed how you view your relationship with Jesus and transformed you personally?
Yeah, that's such a good question. The last couple of years, it's been way harder than I thought it would be. And I do not claim to do it. I've done it perfectly. And again, that's kind of the point. There's growth that happens there. I think that there's this learning moment or moments where you see that if I try to do this my way, it's all going to fall apart. And if I think that I've got a handle on this and I can manhandle it and figure it out and manipulate and like just all those things, I'm going to be the one that finds myself in a world of hurt. So it has been this needed force for me to submit myself. And I think that's been one of the words, submit myself to Jesus, to default to his leadership. It makes decisions easier, frankly, because sometimes I think like, if I did this, then that, but in the end, it's not a game. It's not a like way of trying to figure out how to best get the most for you. It's how can I do what's right? How can I represent Jesus well, knowing that whatever happens is going to happen. And if I trust him, I know that he'll take care of me. And so that's been really hard. But even in like relational things, workplace stuff, and dealing with people from church and encouraging people, there's been this reminder that keeps things simple. A reminder of what's true too, because I would assume like when you're in a leadership position too, it's very easy to get sucked into what the world says of what a good leader does and how they act and how they, treat people or make decisions. And so it is, again, that perspective shift or that lens through which you view like, okay, no, I'm not doing things or leading the way the world influences me to lead. I'm going to lead the way Jesus is asking me to lead. Yeah, definitely. And like so much of that is, what's our goal? Our goal is to be a healthy church that points people towards Jesus, that represents Jesus well. And to equip people to do that in their own corner. 100%. Own neighborhood, own workplace. Yeah. And that's what's beautiful when the church does that, right? Like it actually like filters out and isn't just confined to like what happens on a Sunday morning. No, it's what happens at 3:00 in the afternoon at the workplace because there's an argument that came up and somebody is there that attends this church and is doing their best to represent Jesus well. They just need a snack. No, just kidding. Little hangry. Yep, totally. Sometimes. Low blood sugar. But to get back to that point about leadership, there is so much pressure out there to pad the bottom line, to do what's right for you and what's helpful to you. And there's this shift that happens when you ask yourself this question, like, how do I represent Jesus well in this moment? That makes it so much less about you and so much more about what God's doing. And it's just easier. Like, honestly, that's the best part is it can be so complicated. You can get so stressed about so many different things, or you can just trust and say, I'm going to do my best to do this his way. And it really does make a difference. Like the anxiety level goes down. Yeah. Even though there's plenty of anxiety still, if I'm being honest. No, that's great. So you spoke a little bit about your excitement when you think about the impact on a community and how you view how the church should participate and should act, and a group of people should act in a community, and how that even invigorated you wanting this mission of representing Jesus well in Ripon and beyond to be our mission statement. Do you want to speak a little bit to that? Like what excites you about having our community behind this mission statement, and what do you see possible when this is embraced? Yeah. Oh, man. It's easy in the church world to try and drum up a lot of excitement and make some big splashy event and all, which is fine. Like, it's fun to do parties and concerts. We have one coming up later this summer out on the green. That's going to be great. Those are awesome. But for me, the thing that really gets me excited are the simple little things that people do all week long. And what I love about this church is that there's this genuine hunger for learning more about who God is and how they can apply it to their life. And that hunger feeds into this mission statement, because at every level of the organization, at personal, like me and my walk every day and me and my interactions with other people every day, community groups, small groups of people that are doing things together, the entire Sunday group of people that show up on a weekend. All of these groups of people have the opportunity to represent Jesus well. And when that like gets ignited and it's just kind of part of the culture, that's the power. Like it's not about a big event. It's about hundreds of people that are then mobilized all week long to go into the community and be the kind of light that God calls them to be. It takes a community like Ripon. Like this is why the church is such a fundamentally important asset to a community, is it takes an entire community like Ripon and fills it with people that say, my hope is here, and I'm going to live this way because of that hope. And because I'm living this way, the entire organization changes and shifts to be healthier. There's more forgiveness. There's more understanding. There's more genuine care for people. All of these things are symptoms of a person that's doing their best to represent Jesus well. And so we get to fill this community with those people, and it lifts the community, quite literally, and fills it with genuinely caring people. I don't think there's anything more beautiful than that. And then also it points all those people to Jesus, right? To give them the same kind of opportunity to experience this love, forgiveness, purpose, direction in life because of those things. So I just think that is really exciting. And one of like the pipe dreams for me is that we can be a church. It'll grow to whatever it grows to, but that we can be a sending church. We can be a church where people come and are here for a while, and however long they're here, whether they're young or old, that when they go to a new community, when they go and do ministry elsewhere or go and live somewhere else, that they would take with them the seeds that have been planted in them here, and it would be just a beautiful gift to the kingdom of God elsewhere. And that's kind of exciting for me that we can be part of doing that.
I love it. I have probably more than one question, but I'm going to say this is my last question.
Okay, great.
How do you keep that wonder alive, or that passion alive behind this mission statement? So it's really easy when it's the first, like a seed of an idea, right? Or you're just starting to understand it and walk it out. But over time, challenges or just change in general. Speak to that a little bit. How do you keep that passion alive behind embracing this calling and identity of being a representative?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Anything can be exciting for a little while.
Yeah.
But then there's those moments where, like the phrase, push comes to shove, and you have to decide kind of what you're all about. Over the last year, I've personally had to do some pretty significant work to be honest with myself about who I am and my own pitfalls, my own stubbornness, my own priorities. In addition to that, I've had to do more work to build word you've used before, a trellis, a foundation, something to hold us up.
Yep.
And that's the like day in, day out reading and reflecting and being slow and honest and like having clear conversations with God, right? God, here I am. I can't carry this. I need you. That's more often the
opening your hands up.
Yeah. Surrender, right? Like,
Surrender.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason I'm bringing that stuff up is this: in order to have this not be a flash in the pan moment or idea, and have this be enduring and lasting, and to be filled with the wonder of what God is doing and where he's leading us, it has to be slow. It has to be steady. It has to be filled with a deep understanding of who God is and who he's calling you to be. And you have to return to that over and over and over again. And then you have to have your eyes open to what he's doing.
Exactly.
Around you.
Exactly.
Like, go ahead.
Yeah. I think it's making sure Jesus stays in the right place of leadership in your life. And that's surrender, right?
Yeah.
Every day saying, okay, Jesus, you're leading my life. I'm not leading my life. You're leading my life. And I'm going to choose also to see the gifts that you are giving me that are right in front of me. It's a perspective shift again.
Yeah. Yeah, you couldn't be more right. I mean, there's always hard days, but in the midst of those hard days, there's so much that God is doing all around you.
Yeah.
And there's so many opportunities that are there. And if you begin to see them and you begin to wonder at them and begin to like take those moments of, oh, this friend did this because of their faith and because of representing Jesus well. And you begin to see like you're part of something much bigger than yourself.
Exactly. And I think you let yourself off the hook. There's a freedom when you realize Jesus is leading my life versus it's all on me.
Totally.
It's up to me. So, okay. Any parting words or any sort of benediction or dad joke?
No dad jokes.
No dad jokes today. You had some jokes last night.
Well, let me say this. You're really good at this. This has been such a good interview, and I love the questions you asked. I didn't know what they were all going to be, so thank you. You're really, really good at this. I hope you'll have a chance to do the interviewing more throughout this podcast. But additionally, I'm just grateful that we get to be part of this. That's my big thing is this deep gratitude to be part of what God is doing here in Ripon and beyond. And I can't believe it. Like it's been the hardest, best thing I've ever experienced.
I agree.
And I've been grateful to do it beside you.
Thank you. All right. So let's give the people one, you know me, I'm so practical and I'm fighting against it, but like what's one step they can take this week to represent Jesus well? Or I can share one and you can share one.
You go first. Yeah. Then
I would say focus on building a relationship with Jesus. Like that is one way that if you continue to build that relationship, everything else will follow.
I think you're exactly right.
You're like making more practical, Meg.
No. I mean, like that's exactly it. So like for me, man, I could go so many directions. Here's one that I'm going to go up. I'm going to bounce off you a little bit.
Yeah.
Building that relationship with Jesus. For me, the practice that has been really helpful has been reading a chapter a day. It's been 2 chapters, one old, one new. But if you want to start someplace, literally read in the gospel who Jesus is, like read a chapter of the gospel and then try to connect it to your day. Like try to okay, what happened in that and how does this impact how I'm going to live my day a little differently?
Yes. What does this teach me about Jesus, and what does this teach me about myself as well?
Exactly.
Yeah. I love that. See, I'm like the abstract. I have this idea and you're like brass tacks.
There we go. We got it.
Good.
Oh man.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll be back with more episodes in this season, but that's the end of episode 1.
Man, it's been so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week, everybody.